All right, everybody. So the Aaron Gallagher and Alex Sorin debate happened last Thursday, and I was planning on doing a debate recap the next day, so last Friday. However, the debate ended up going a lot longer than I thought. The debate and the open discussion, that is. And there was just so much to try and remember, and I didn't end up having time to rewatch the debate on Friday. And then family came into town, and I've been busy this entire week, and so I hadn't had the chance to watch the debate again, so I could do a good review of it. But it's come to the point now where I've been able to rewatch the debate twice, so I've watched it 3 times total now, and I wanted to come and give my honest thoughts about the debate, about the debaters, what they did good, what they did bad, what in the debate itself was good and what was bad, and of course it's just my opinion. And initially I was planning on giving my opinion on who I thought won the debate, but at this point I actually don't think I want to do that anymore because so many people have already kind of given their own thoughts about that. So I want to go beyond that and just trying to give as objective as a perspective I possibly can on the debate, on what the debaters did good and bad, what I thought was good about the debate, what I thought was bad about it. And so I have some notes down here. I'll be glancing down quite a bit. I'm not going to put a ton of editing into this video, if any. I'm probably just going to leave it nice and clean, and so that it's just me expressing my thoughts, just kind of talking about this. And so it'll be a less edited video than normal. And I'm sorry that I have glasses on. I know that's reflecting. Really need my contacts to come in, but haven't had them come in yet. So unfortunately, you have to deal with the light reflecting off of these sneaking. They're like the IR reflector, the blue light rather, glasses that kind of help your vision when you're staring at screens all day, I guess. But I unfortunately have to wear the glasses, and so I'm sorry if the lighting's a little weird. But anyways, on the debate, I think the getting into the debate itself, I guess, rather than the debaters, in general, what did I think was good and bad about the debate? Well, the good thing about it, first thing I took note of watching it, I've watched it 3 times now, as I said. The first thing that I thought was really good about the debate was actually about the debaters, how passionate they were, and how smart both of them are. Both Aaron and Alex are incredibly smart, and they are both incredibly passionate. And you could tell it was like oozing out of the debate, the passion that they had for it, for the subject they're talking about, and the vigor that they are arguing with for their own positions. And so it's really nice seeing two intelligent people debating a topic that they clearly care a lot about. And honestly, you can tell it's just people who just want to genuinely find the truth or be in line with the truth. And so seeing them debate in that manner was really, really awesome. Again, I don't know if I've said this already, but I'm going to say it now if I haven't. I'm not going to go out and say who I thought won the debate. That's just not what this video's for. There's plenty of people who already have. You can see in the comment sections people arguing about back and forth about who won. I'm just going to try and give as objective as a perspective as I can on this. I don't want to be here to try and say, oh, I think this person and this person won. I've watched it 3 times for a reason. I really am trying to be as objective as I can. And I know it's impossible to be actually neutral, but I want to try and be. My entire point of this channel and in my own spiritual journey is I want to find the truth. I want to search for the truth, and I want to challenge every single opinion that I have held, because challenging yourself is the only way to truly engage in critical thinking and to actually go towards the truth. And so I tried my best to approach this as objectively as possible. Another good thing about this debate, this isn't linked to the debate itself, like you won't find this in the debate, but it's kind of the atmosphere around it, is that both Aaron and Alex did post-debate reviews. So Aaron did a debate review on Marco Arroyo's channel, In Between Sundays, who Marco is the one who hosted the debate, and I'll have the debate down below, and I'll tag all of them down below if you want to go find their channels and such. And then Alex did a review on his own channel. I've watched both of them. I'm not going to get into the debate reviews. I'm just going to go, I'm not going to let anything they said in those debate reviews influence anything I'm saying here, because again, I want this strictly to be about the debate. But both the debate review, I'd highly recommend watching both of them. I think the one that Aaron did on In Between Sundays channel was 2 hours long, and then Alex's on his own channel was about 5 hours long, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot. That's long if you want to watch both of them, but I think it's very much worth it because it can maybe help clear up things that either side said, or either side may give more arguments for why their position is true and the others isn't. Um, Another thing good about the debate in general is that it was pretty cordial. Obviously, debates can get intense in some moments, and we'll get to that later. But in general, the debate was very cordial, and again, that's just always great to see. All around, the debate was just enjoyable. It was very fascinating, very interesting. If no matter what your position is, if you have to admit in some way it had to get you thinking about a position, because both people brought up some decent points. And so when people are doing that, it makes the debates enjoyable, it makes them interesting, and it makes you think critical about your own positions. All right, so the more bad parts of the debate, but I really had to struggle to think of some bad things here because it really was a great debate. Some of the bad things I wrote down is that I put reduced to my interpretation versus yours in some areas, and then a subnote I put resulted in quasi arguments from silence. Uh, and then I have something a note there that says commenters thought that at least. So what I meant by that is that the debate subject was, do the scriptures teach apostolic succession? I think that was the exact framing. It was something like that, very close to that, if it wasn't that exactly. And so when it came down to it, in some areas it was just like two people arguing about their interpretation of scripture, or in the case Aaron's interpretation of scripture versus the Orthodox Church's interpretation of scripture, and they just were talking past each other a lot because of that, because there's more fundamental things that they weren't discussing that were undergirding everything else. And so because of these different interpretations, it was just in some areas just talking past each other a lot. And then the arguments from silence, I don't know if I necessarily agree with this. I made sure to put it in here because I do think commenters did point this out. I saw people in the live stream chat saying, hey, argument for science, or in the comment sections. And I think the reason why people were saying that is because because there's certain words that aren't used in scripture, but for example, things are inferred, or there's positions brought up, like I know Aaron brought up the apostolic delegate or something like that, and the challenge was like, oh hey, that's not in scripture, and people were saying argument from science, and so I don't necessarily agree with that, because I don't think making inference from scripture uh, results in an argument from silence. But I do understand where they're coming from, because there's some from both sides were being accused of this, but you have to make inferences sometimes. So I don't 100% agree that it was riddled with arguments from silence or anything like that. Um, One thing, a personal critique I did have, is that I didn't think there was enough rebuttal periods. Each debater only had a single 5-minute rebuttal period, and I'm not a huge fan of that. I really like debates where there's at least 2 or 3 rebuttal periods before they get into cross examination, because I think that makes cross examination better, and I think that having more rebuttal periods actually makes the debate in general more enjoyable. So personally, I would have preferred 2 or 3. Personally, I would have preferred 3 5-minute rebuttals each. I get sometimes that can make the debate a little bit long, but they went so long anyways, I don't see why that would hurt. But 2 also would have been good, 2 each. But there was only one 5-minute rebuttal each, and I just wasn't a big fan of that, to be honest. I always like debates where there's more rebuttal periods before they get into cross examination. Even though cross examination is typically one of the funnest parts of the debate, it's really where you get to dig in, and people get to try and back each other into a corner. I still like the rebuttal periods personally. There's something about them that I find super enriching and interesting. So, getting away from the debate itself, those are the good and bad thoughts I had about the debate in general. We're going to get into the debaters, and we're going to go over the good and then the bad. And I want to make it clear here that their bad is not me saying that they are bad debaters or anything like that. It's just going to be thoughts on what I think they could have done better. And obviously, you can't be perfect in the debate. It's nearly impossible to be perfect in a debate. But there are things obviously you can reflect on and think, okay, I can improve that next time I have a debate. But for the good, starting with Alex, because he went first, I thought Alex had a very strong opening statement. In my opinion, he presented an argument that I don't think Aaron was ready for, and I don't think he was anticipating it. He used Old Testament typography, to argue for apostolic succession. That was one of his arguments for it, and I thought that was a pretty interesting line of argumentation. I don't think Aaron was ready for it based on how he responded. He did have some sort of response, but the response was not really substantive at all to the amount of time that was dedicated by Alex in his opening statement. Another thing that was very good about his Alex's opening statement, I don't have this written down, but it just in the top of my head, it makes me think of it. He had a lot of scripture in his opening statement. It was very impressive how much scripture he managed to fit into the opening statement, and then that I'm gonna go back to that in a little bit when we talk about something Aaron did. But in general, Alex had a very good and strong opening statement, in my opinion. Uh, as another good thing for Alex is that he controlled his cross examination pretty easily. But with this, I am gonna go ahead and get into something that he did that's bad, just because it ties right into this. So I put controlled cross examination easily, and I have a subpoint here where I wrote he was aggressive. And then in quotes, I have also bad, or a bad thing for a Church of Christ audience. So what do I mean by that? And this is going to be one of the bad things, and I'll briefly mention it later. The reason why I say this is a bad thing is because the churches of Christ in this modern, I guess, 21st century appearance have not really done a ton of debates, or at least high profile or these types of formal debates. And because of that, members of the churches of Christ, it doesn't seem, have watched a lot of debates, and they aren't really familiar, from what I can understand, with the fact that cross examination and debates in general are not a friendly thing. Cross examination can be brutal, it can be very, very intense, it can be very aggressive. That's the point of it. I am used to that. So when I saw Alex going very intense at Aaron, I wasn't really fazed by it. I didn't think he was being mean. I was thinking that he was doing a good cross-examination. That's what cross-examination is. However, there's a lot of people angry, and like in my personal life, people who don't really watch debates were like, he was being so mean, he was being so rude, and I mean, he just wasn't. I know it can appear that way, but I'm not trying to be like somebody who's just like, oh, trying to be the exact opposite of everybody. I can't think of the actual name of that right now, but genuinely, that's not rude or anything. That's just a good cross-examination. You're supposed to be intense. Debates in general are supposed to be intense. You're supposed to be trying to back somebody in the corner. You're supposed to be cutting them off. That's your time. In a cross-examination, you are allowed to interrupt. That's just how it is. And so during that, people were getting irritated with how rude he was being, but he wasn't really being rude. He was just being intense. And you're allowed to interrupt. You're allowed to stop talking about whatever you want, move on to something whenever you want in a cross-examination. That's just how it is. But again, the reason why I'm saying that's a bad thing is to a Church of Christ audience. If he's wanting to sway Churches of Christ members, if Alex is wanting to do that, and I'm sure he wasn't doing this just to win, I'm sure he was doing this because he genuinely wants people to come to Orthodoxy, because he believes Orthodoxy is the truth, then I think it could have been better to take a step back and look at how they would see it and go a bit gentler during the cross-examination, because again, Churches of Christ audiences are not used to that, and so they thought it came off very rude and such. So another very strong part of the debate for Alex, in my opinion, one of the strongest points he made, even though it wasn't really, it wasn't aimed at number one, it wasn't aimed at the fact that he has the affirmative in the debate, but it also wasn't aimed directly at the topic of the debate, which is, do the scriptures teach apostolic succession? But it still was a point that left lasting impressions in people's minds, and I'll know this for a reason I'll get into in a second, was a fact that he made a very strong point and a very good critique, in my opinion, about the fact that there are a lot of Churches of Christ who have unqualified men leading the congregation. The Church of Christ have a lot of congregations where they don't have elders or deacons or any leadership at all, and it's just men who get in meetings and have discussions and decide things about the congregation. He had a very, as he was saying it, book, chapter, verse mentality that left a lasting impression on everybody. The reason why I can feel like I left the lasting impression is not only in the live chat, in the chat, the comment section under the debate, and the comment sections under both the recap videos, and in my personal life. And all of those, people were saying, yeah, that was a good critique. I had, probably 5 or 6 people in my own personal life come up to me on the Sunday following the debate and talk to me like, dude, that was a good point. That was a good point. That was a good point. They kept telling me how they agreed with Alex, and that was a huge issue, and that is a very it's a very damning thing for our atmosphere, or our worldview regarding the Churches of Christ. And so, and I agree. It's a good critique, and it's something that needs to be fixed. And I just caught myself. I need to go back a second there and make it clear that the people in my personal life also weren't used to watching the debates, and so that's some of the people who were telling me they felt like he was being rude in the cross examination, and so that feeds into the fact that they also thought that he made a good point with that critique there, that there's unqualified men leading the churches of Christ. Just kind of interesting, because it shows that people were still able to see the good points he did make, even if they thought he was mean or whatever. Anyways, just something kind of interesting. And then the last things that I thought Alex did good, he did kind of corner Aaron somewhat at some point. I didn't really see the whole point it had to do with the debate topic itself, but he got Aaron to admit that he, or Alex in this case, is a New Testament Christian, and that he essentially got him to admit that it's sort of a doctrinal purity test to see if you are a Christian or not in some of the Churches of Christ view. The reason why this is such a big deal is because one of the points he was making is that Churches of Christ can't even agree on who is and who isn't a Christian, or how you get saved, or who is saved and who isn't saved. This is the big issue in the Churches of Christ. I know that personally. This is one of the things I've critiqued us about. Again, as you guys know, or maybe you have no idea who I am, maybe this is the first time watching this channel, you're just kind of hearing my thoughts. I'm a member of the Churches of Christ. I wouldn't call myself a Churches of Christ apologist or anything like that. I'm just a guy who started YouTube to trying in to explore theology and philosophy and such. And I would also say, and everybody I know knows this, and people made jokes about it, I am quite easily the most self-critical member of the Churches of Christ possible, because I know there's a lot of things that I don't believe are correct, and so I'm trying my best to just find the truth and talk to people and have these discussions. And honestly, that's just what I'm here for, is to find the truth. That's my entire thing here. But regardless, I think that's, again, framing it in the way that you guys can maybe see that I'm trying my best to approach this objectively. And so yeah, I do think it was a good a point, or a good thing that Alex accomplished when he got Aaron to admit that he's a New Testament Christian, because then he was just like, well, then, if I'm a Christian in your view and I'm just in error, then why do I truly need the Churches of Christ, right? If I'm saved in your view, why do I need the Churches of Christ? And then the last thing, this is more minor, but he did mention it explicitly, so that's why I'm going to mention it here, is that he was able to turn Cini on Aaron. So if you don't know Cini, it's C-E-N-I. It stands for Command, Example, and Necessary Inference. It's essentially a Churches of Christ hermeneutic, or a hermeneutic that's popular in the Churches of Christ. And Alex was able to turn that N-I, the necessary inference part, on Aaron when it came to discussions about Timothy and the laying on of hands. And so I'm not going to get into that too much. If you want to find that, or you want even more information on that, just go watch the debate and you'll know the part I'm talking about, because he explicitly mentions it. Now, the good for that's all for the good I have written down for Alex. Now for Aaron. What did Aaron do good? A lot more of his are more straightforward, so it may be quicker getting through his. First off, I think Aaron did a very good job at shifting the burden of proof within the debate, because some of the arguments that Alex was making, or what Alex was requesting of Aaron, is, hey, show me book, chapter, verse where these Churches of Christ practices are permitted. And what Aaron was saying is, no, I don't have to do that. I'm not in the affirmative to prove that these Churches of Christ things are true. You're in the affirmative to prove that apostolic succession in the scriptures is true. And so he did a good job at reminding people, hey, I don't have to respond to that, because I'm not in the affirmative for that position. Now, what it seemed that Alex was trying to do was set up a reductio ad absurdum. And so what I think, this is another point I have listed out here, is that I think Aaron did a good job at showing that Alex's reductio ad absurdum that he was trying to set up wasn't the best fit for this debate, because the debate topic and the way the debate is framed, it didn't really suit the reductio to be able to play out as I think Alex wanted it to. That's not to say that the reductio didn't leave lasting impressions in people's minds who were watching the debate and didn't leave an impact on the audience and on the rest of the debate, but just that Aaron did a good job at trying his best to do damage control in saying, hey, you're in the affirmative, I am not. We're not discussing the Church of Christ and these practices, we're discussing apostolic succession. So let's keep it on focus there. I don't have to do what you're asking me. I don't have to show book, chapter, and verse for these things because I'm not in the affirmative to prove these things. So he did a good job at reminding people that he isn't in the affirmative. So he did a good job at not allowing the shifting of the burden of proof to occur there. Another thing Aaron did well is he stayed very calm, cool, and collected in all of this. It was good to see because I wasn't too familiar with how he would be under like cross-examination, because I knew Alex does do cross-examinations pretty intensely, which he did, as we talked about. But I wasn't sure how Aaron would be under that, and he seemed to do very good. He stayed calm in his cross-examination. He was very, very on point. He stayed calm throughout it, and his rebuttals and his opening statements, he didn't seem phased at all. So he did a very good job at staying collected, and in my opinion, he did better at appearing to the audience as the most confident in calmness. I want to be very clear. Confident in calmness and then confidence in general, or in my opinion, are two different things. To some people, staying calm in a debate and such is the ultimate form of being confident. To others, seeming confident in a way that Alex did, and for example, in his cross-examination, is the ultimate form of confidence. I'm not here to say which is the correct way to appear confident or anything like that. I'm just saying that to some people, Aaron did seem more confident in his position. Now, another thing Aaron did pretty well is that he played well into the ancient church game. And what I mean by that is that he provided a lot of quotes from the ancient or early church fathers, which are obviously very important to church history in general. They should be important to everybody. Early church fathers should be important to everybody, but they are very important to the people like the Orthodox and the Catholics as well. They put a lot of weight on the interpretations of the early church fathers and their writings and such. Not that they believe that they're infallible or anything. They just believe they're very, very, very important. And for example, I believe they're important as well, but they would believe they're much more important than I would. However, this isn't a bad thing. It's just a risk that it comes with doing this. I put risky. Many will claim he took them out of context. There was one moment, I think it was when he quoted Ignatius of Antioch, where the chat went crazy ballistic saying, why is this guy quoting Ignatius? Ignatius affirms apostolic succession. He doesn't deny it. And so people are going to claim that he took that out of context. He took Ignatius out of context. And that he wasn't including his entire worldview, and that he was trying to make Ignatius look like he affirms something he doesn't. So that's a risky move, but I still think it's good. Does good because obviously it played into that type of style well. Another good thing that Aaron did is he knew when to move on in cross-examination. In his cross-examination, when something was going his way and he got to the point he wanted to get in, he didn't want to go any further, he just moved on. And then in his cross-examination, in my opinion personally, when things weren't going his way fully, he knew when to move on. He didn't want to dig a hole any deeper, or maybe when he saw that something wasn't going to be as productive as he wanted it to, he moved on. He didn't worry about it. He just went on and continued the debate in other ways. I thought he did a really good job with that. I thought that knowing when to move on to cross-examination to a new topic and preserving your time well and managing your time well, which he did good. Both of them managed their time very well, but he also did a very good job at managing his time. Knowing when to do that in cross-examination is a very good trait, in my opinion. All right, I'm recording a little longer at the 24 minutes right now, I think, so I'll try and speed it up a little bit. The last, never mind. I already mentioned that. I already mentioned that, Aaron. The last note I have is actually about the reductio, but I already mentioned that earlier. So, yeah, we're good there. So that's the good that I think both Alex and Aaron did. For now, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the bad, and I make those air quotes very, very important because they're both much smarter and much better debate than I guarantee I am, and so I don't want to make it seem like I know everything and that I'm so much smarter and that I could do better because I couldn't. All right. So the bad for Alex. Again, I'm gonna mention it quickly. Even though we're not gonna go over it again, but I'm gonna mention it quickly as a reminder. His cross examination was too harsh for the Churches of Christ audience. So if he was wanting to win their support, which I do think he was, I think he should have taken it a different direction. He's probably just not aware of the fact that Churches of Christ people probably don't watch a lot of debates. In general, we just don't. I'm sure if he was more aware of that, he probably would have taken it in a different direction. But for the Churches of Christ audience, it was a bit too harsh. Next, for Alex, if he was trying to really hone in on this reductio, in my opinion, he chose some bad times to do it, and he didn't do it super well. And the reason why is just because if you have somebody who's not going to allow it, like Aaron, it's a risky move to try and force a reductio when you don't have the affirmative. I personally believe that reductios are incredibly valid and incredibly good forms of argumentation. I don't fault him at all for trying to bring up a reductio against the Churches of Christ view, especially when there are issues that lie in the Churches of Christ view, like the unqualified men problem. The issue is that when you have someone like Aaron who's going to push back to that, and who's going to try their best to not allow it, it doesn't really fit too well. And so Alex's reductio, valid for the topic and for him being an affirmative. That's a little different. I think even if you're Orthodox or if you're Catholic and you're rooting for Alex here, I think you could even agree with me on that. In that the reductio for this topic and for the fact that he had the affirmative isn't really great. So if he had been in the negative in some way here, and Aaron had been in the affirmative, the reductio he was presenting would have been a really, really good point. Again, it's very good argument. Just don't know if it fit too well for him being in the affirmative, because it just didn't pan out as much as it would have if he was in the negative in some way. All right, next. The bad for Alex, the last thing I have written down, is he interrupted a bit too much in his cross-examination. Again, I've watched a lot of debates. I understand he's a lawyer. I understand how cross-examinations work. Whenever you are doing a cross-examination, you are allowed to interrupt as much as you want. That is your time to do whatever you want, to make whatever point you want, to move on whenever you want, to interrupt whenever you want. The issue was there was two or three times where he would ask a question, Aaron would he would start responding, he would interrupt and say, "Oh, you blundered. If you want to appear like you are confident in your position to the audience, let them talk a little bit, like a few seconds. Like let them talk for 5 or 6, 7, 8 seconds. And if at that point they still aren't answering, interrupt and say, "Hey, no, you're pontificating. You're talking too much. Hey, let's circle back. I'm gonna ask you this question again. I need an answer. I can't let you just ramble on." But to do as he was at one point, and like 2 or 3 points within his cross examination, just over and over and over and over interrupting, I was like, oh man, this is a little rough. It wasn't horrible. I don't want to make it sound like he was interrupting the entire time. It was just like in the first quarter of his cross examination, it was kind of a lot of interrupting. He didn't really let Aaron answer. And I get that maybe he thought that Aaron was going to ramble on and use up his time, and it's fair to interrupt at that point and say, "Hey, you're just going on and on. I need an answer." I just think that he could have taken it a different direction. He could have let Aaron talk a little bit more and then interrupted. He would have appeared a lot more graceful to the audience, in my opinion, had he done that. All right, so those are the main things I had for Alex. Moving on to Aaron. The bad. I mentioned I was going to circle back to this earlier at the beginning. So for the bad, remember that this debate was, do the scriptures teach apostolic succession? Aaron did not have as much scripture as you would expect in his opening. In fact, a bulk of it was not really laden with scripture at all. I was kind of disappointed in that, honestly. That was one of the biggest disappointments I had in the debate, was that Aaron didn't have as much scripture in his opening as I thought personally he should for the debate topic. And now, again, he was playing into the early church game by having a lot of early church fathers and such, and those and scholars as well. But a lot of the scholars he quoted were just kind of like irrelevant, because he was quoting people who obviously are going to share his opinion, or that share or don't have a problem with like development of doctrine. But the from the I guess from the mindset of these scholars, they're happy to admit this stuff and have their own interpretation. But like, of course, an Orthodox person is going to say, "Yeah, I just don't agree with that at all," right? Like, this quoting these scholars to accept to help you out here is kind of odd because, and again, I didn't check up on these quotes or anything, but it just seemed odd because it's like, well, scholars are kind of irrelevant to this conversation because of course the Orthodox are going to have their own opinions on these things. Like, if you want to catch them in or catch him in a contradiction or something, or in a tough spot, quote Orthodox scholars who you believe say that. And at some point he did do that. He didn't quote a scholar, but he quoted the Orthodox Churches of America handbook for converts. Like, what do Orthodox believe, essentially? However, this was another thing I have written down that was bad, and this is something that kind of irritate me a little bit sometimes. But it's rough. Is that his opening statement included a quote from that Orthodox Church of America handbook that didn't include the entire context. And as soon as I saw it pop up on the screen, I knew I knew exactly what the quote was because he had actually quoted it before in discussions with the folks over at Transfigured Life, the Orthodox guys over at Transfigured Life. And I had actually kind of looked up exactly what he's talking about on the Orthodox Church of America's website, downloaded the handbook, went to the exact page, and realized that the part he was quoting was taken out of context. So, to give it very briefly, you can find this book online on the Orthodox Church of America's website for free as a PDF. But on pages 137, 138, I believe, they're going over the bishops, elders, deacons, and such, and the terms used in the New Testament for elders and deacons and bishops, such. And so the point he was trying to make, that Aaron was trying to make, is that elder and bishop are the words used for them refer to the same office and they're used interchangeably. So he quoted from the Orthodox Churches of America handbook where they said that it seems to be quoted interchangeably, or that the terms are used interchangeably, and he left it at that. So the point he was trying to make, I believe, or it seems, is that, hey, even Orthodox are admitting that these are used interchangeably, therefore it was the development for them to become 3 distinct offices instead of just 2 distinct offices, or that it became a development to see elder and bishop become separate offices instead of one distinct one office and wrapped in one, just using 2 terms to refer to the one office, if that makes sense. The issue is he didn't include the full context because it seemed like in the handbook, you can go read it for yourself and take your own thoughts away from this, but it seemed like to me that the author was essentially stating this is what people will state and that it does appear this way. However, in the very next paragraph, he says that the distinction was merely a terminological one. And so what he was saying is that they can look like this, they can look like they refer to the same office, but it's just a terminological thing, and that in reality, they are still referring to multiple or 2 distinct offices, bishop, elder, and then deacon below, instead of just elder and bishop being the same office. And so personally, if you're going to quote from something like that, and you can tell that in the very next paragraph, they give their explanation for why they are saying what they just said, and you don't include that part, it's just dishonest to me, because clearly the guy who wrote that handbook, or the people that wrote that handbook, would have looked at how Aaron quoted it and said, wait, what? No, we're not saying that at all. Because in the very next paragraphs, they explain exactly what they meant. And so to me, it was kind of dishonest in a way. At least it was a weaker quote, because people can go fact check that for themselves in less than a minute. Look it up, download it, page search, or Control F for 138 and find it, and find for themselves that, okay, well, you didn't include the full context. And so when you do that, it makes your argument a lot weaker, in my opinion. And I've had problems in the past where I've made responses to people who did not include the full context of things, and it makes me really mad when people don't include the full context of quotes. And so because of that, that really irked me a bit. So I put that on the bad for Aaron. Other than that, I'm trying to think of anything else. Oh yeah, for the Old Testament argument that Alex presented, I don't think Aaron gave a good response to it. He did not give enough attention to that, because that was a positive argument by Alex for apostolic succession, and I just don't think that Aaron actually responded to it thoroughly enough. I just personally, I just don't think he did. And when you don't do that, and you don't dedicate enough time to it, or you don't dedicate enough time to disprove it in a way that would be obvious to the audience, in that case, it seems like you essentially concede that point, and that's what it seemed like. It seemed like Aaron wasn't ready to answer the argument that Alex presented from the Old Testament in the Old Testament typography or shadow and the seed of Moses, and so it seemed like he just kind of left it and didn't really touch it, and so it seemed like a concession. You can disagree with me. I don't know. You can disagree with me, but that's just how it felt for me. Let's see. The only thing else I had here, and this isn't even a bad thing. This is just another. Again, it goes right back to the my interpretation for sure interpretation thing. Is that Aaron introduced something called an apostolic delegate in the debate. Alex called him out for this because it doesn't fit with, in his opinion, sola scriptura. And he's basically saying, why are you introducing a role that we don't see in Scripture? They went back and forth on that. But again, the only reason I put that as a bad thing, it's not really, in my opinion, it's not a bad thing at all. This is just kind of goes back to the beginning of what I was saying. It's my interpretation for sure interpretation, and like the arguments for science, where it's like, okay, can we call what we think this position is an apostolic delegate? And where people were saying that's an argument from silence and such is that we didn't really see that at all, and so it's like, well, how can you say that this is how can you say that this is a real rule? It was interesting. I that's not even really a bad thing. I have it like lower than all the other ones because it really isn't a bad thing. It's just a thing where if you're gonna stay consistent in saying, hey, we don't see bishop as its own role in Scripture, that it seems weird to bring in apostolic delegate, which is a role you don't see anywhere in Scripture, period, at all. We don't even see that as its own distinct thing at all, period. Whereas at least bishop, you see the term used in Scripture. It's just arguing about whether or not it's interchangeable with elder, the same office as elder, or its own distinct office. So again, I guess that's the main point I was trying to get across, but it just rounds it right back to the fact that it turned into my interpretation for shears and some points. But I hope that made sense. And we are at 37 minutes now. Wow, I've been yapping for a long time. But those are my thoughts on the debate, honestly. Again, I'm not going to go into who I think won or lost. I think that's a moot point. I think that the most important thing with these debates is not hearing about whose opinion on who won or who lost. And if people are doing that, oftentimes you have your own presuppositions anyways, and you went into the debate thinking, oh yeah, this person's going to win. And I'm not even saying that I went to the debate perfectly neutral. It's impossible to do that. Anybody who pretends that they can be perfectly neutral is lying to themselves and lying to their audience. So the main point I'm trying to get out there is that no, I'm not going to tell you guys who I think won or lost. I did my best to provide here objective overview of the debate. And if you guys watched the debate, please let me know down below what your thoughts were. Who do you what points did you bring up that you thought you enjoyed? If you want to go into who you thought won, do it. Let's see a discussion happen. Let me know what you thought the debaters did good, what they did bad. Let me know what you thought of the debate, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever it may be. Thank you so much to Aaron Gallagher and to Alex Sorin and to Marco Arroyo for having such a great debate. Thank you again, like Marco, I mentioned him. He hosted it. He did a very good job at hosting it. He stayed very unbiased throughout the entire thing. It was really, really awesome to see both of them go, Aaron and Alex go at it, and then have a good moderator there who's Marco. So thank you to all three of you guys. You guys made this debate happen. It was fascinating. It was awesome. And I can't wait to see any other debates that pop up soon. So again, thank you guys for watching. Let me know your thoughts down below. And again, I say put some comments down below about the debates and about the debaters, what you thought personally about it. And yeah, that's about all I have for you guys today. I'm sorry for the lack of uploads. It's just, again, I thought I was going to do this last week and I wasn't able to. We're going to have a new episode of the podcast soon. It's been delayed a little bit because of some stuff, but very excited for that. And then after that, we're going to do the last episode of the church history. So These next two episodes of the podcast will be church history, and then after that we'll move on, I believe, if we can fit enough into 2 episodes, which I think we'll be able to. Anyways, with that, final goodbyes, I promise. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts down below. Please like, comment, and subscribe. If you enjoyed the video, share it with everybody. If you maybe had similar thoughts or other people had similar thoughts, share the video with them. And again, let's just get a discussion going here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope that you have a very blessed day.